we're going to talk about now is serializers. So serializers, they aren't represented on our board here, on our little map, because they're actually considered a use case. Now, I think if you really want to get strict on the use case definition, they might not be honestly, truly a use case. A use case to me touches more than one entity, and these serializers only touch one entity typically, but that's kind of splitting hairs. So we sort them into a folder. They're in the use case folder, and they're called serializers. Now, serializers, as you guys might know, serialization is recording the state of something into an object. Usually it's JSON, that's what we're doing here, and storing it in a way that this same state object can be reapplied later. So when you're looking at our apps and you see, any sort of save state, any of our slideshow where the camera state is saved or a text input is saved, that is serialization. And you write a serializer for that. So in our current project, you can see there's a factory function at the beginning. Hey, Mick's going to join us. Nice. You can see there's a factory function here in the serializers, and it's responsible for instantiating all the serializers. And you can see currently we've got serialized hotspot or serialized scene root, serialize the hotspots, and serialize the app states. And so we've got 3 serialized systems already going. And we're going to add another one because we want to serialize the pick challenge, that new entity we made. Essentially, the author's going to come into this thing. Let me find that picture again. The author's going to come into here. They're going to, enter this text of the feedback that we've been talking about. They're going to tell us which one is the correct answer, and then they're going to hit save. And at that moment, that's when we serialize. We store that state and put it into a string, an object, a stringified object, really. We put it into JSON, actually. And we put that away. And then when it's time to show this state, that object is given back to the app, and the app has said, all right, here is your state. Deserialize it. Here is your state. Apply your state. So that's what's going on. Hopefully that makes sense. But I'll show you guys how this thing works. These serializers, they tie into a bigger system. There's a whole serialized system going on out there. What you need to do, the big picture here is whenever you've been asked to serialize something or extend a serialized state, we're working with a class. This is called serialized app state. And notice that it implements a serialized system. So we are implementing, this class is implementing a serialized system. And what this does is it allows this class to be integrated into the bigger serialized system, the bigger state machine that's going on. So you can see that serialized system comes from the app package that we talked about a little bit ago, the entities in that. All right, so let's go ahead and implement this serialized system. Let's jump over to our card real quick, just to get a quick look at this guy. I don't think I pulled it in yet. Let's see. Maybe I did pull it in there. Let's see. Where is my serialize? Refactor, continue, try again, extend, validate. Oh, is it in the backlog? Did I not add it? Come on. Well, thought I had one in here for serialized app state, but I am not seeing it. Oh, pick challenge serializer. This is it. Here we go. Yeah, it's in the to-do. So let me go back to that. So let's go here. Pick challenge serialize. There it is. Here we go. Found it. All right, let me drag this over here, and let's look at this guy. Oh, not very descriptive. Create a new serializer for the pick challenge state. Let's jump over. We'll jump into our document about it. Do we have any more information in here about the pick state serializer? I think we do. Yeah, here we go. So here's our document about creates a new serializer for the pick challenge state. So essentially, we want to take that entity and store all the details into an object. That's really what it boils down to. So let's do it. All right, let's get back to here. Let's go ahead, and in our serializer folder, we're going to create a new serializer. We're going to call this Serialize Pick Challenge TS. And again, as you guys can imagine, we are good programmers, so we immediately make a test. C-R-I-A-S-E-R. Serialize Pick Challenge .test. Yes. All right. Now, I spelled something wrong. Serial up. I spelled this one wrong. Such a bad speller. Okay, here we go. Now we're going to make this class. So we're going to export class serialize C-R-I-A-L-I-Z-E pick challenge. And this is going to implement. Is it implement or extends? I always have to reference back. Yeah, we're going to implement this serialized system. So we're going to implement this serialized system. Let me import that. Again, that's coming from our app npm package. Here we go. And now I'm going to hit the quick fix on this. And you can see, because I'm implementing this system, we're implementing, this is an interface. When you implement an interface, what it is it's a contract that says, all right, your class, my class, must fulfill these parameters. So, first thing we need is a name. All right. So, I need to write, I'll bring some documents over, but each serialized system has its own name. So this one is called hotspots. This one is called app state. And what's important is that this name is unique within this app. This is how the system knows to give this serializer this piece of data and this serializer this piece of data when it comes back around. So we're going to just say, we're going to name ours equals pick. Let's give it a string. Pick challenge. All right. Now it's important. When we get into serialization, it's important to remember that serializing data, so at some point an author is going to make an activity. They're going to hit that save button. That's going to go into an activity data file, and that's going to get stored on an S3 bucket. And that's going to live out there for who knows how long. And down the road, we should just assume that in 5 years, somebody's going to open up, they're going to click on that activity. It's going to pull in that activity data file. We're going to pull out this activity string or this serialized string, and we're going to send it back to this system. So it's important that these systems are always backwards compatible. So right now, this is brand new. This is a fresh system. So we're going to start out our serialized version number at 1. But this is in here so that in a few weeks, when something changes in our pick challenge and we need to store other data, we add a new feature, we add an icon or a color or I don't know, we add something, we can bump the serialization version number up to 2 if our data has changed, our serialized data has changed, and we can still maintain backwards compatibility. So when we get presented with data, we're also going to be given the version of that data, and we have to maintain backwards compatibility to always be able to hand previous versions of the serialized data for this state. So that's what this serialization version number is for. It's for the future. So we'll start it off at 1. All right, now you can see we've got three functions that we need to fill out. This is the one. This is called get state system state. This is what is going to be called by the system, by the big system, whenever it wants to store the state. And so our job here is to look at our entity, form up our state object, and send it to that guy to take care of, and he stores it. So you can see we're going to get called, and we're going to return just a vanilla object. The system, the bigger system, doesn't care about the object. The definition of the object is up to us. It's up to our system, what we need, all right? And then the inverse is going to happen at some point. Sometime that system is going to say, hey, here is an object I want you to apply. And it's going to send us back an object that we had formed, probably. And we need to take that object and apply it to our system. So that's what's going on here. And you can see we're going to get a vanilla object, a state object. We're also going to get a version number. So that's where this version number comes in, right? When we write it out, our version number is 1. In a month, we might be at version number 2, but we could still receive objects that are version 1, and we have to be able to handle that. We also will receive a transition duration. So where this is really being applied is in the transition when we're going from one slide to the next. And so some states will have nice, smooth transitions, like our camera view. You'll notice when you're playing in the Hotspot app, when you go from next to previous, it's nice and smooth. This is handling that because that's a state change. When you click that next button for the state, we're getting this message, and then we get a transition duration. Our particular state is not going to need we don't care about transition because we're just storing essentially, the feedback text we talked about for the hotspots and which one is correct. That's what we're going to end up storing. And then finally, there's this fallback where sometimes we're just told to apply a default state. And this means a lot of times we're starting out in an empty state. There's no data yet. We're creating a new slide. And so, or there's no data for this state in the activity data file. So it's kind of like, well, what do you do if you don't have data? Set the state however you want. All right, so let's get into this. Let's go ahead and we'll get our test going over here. And let's get going. So let's do make test rig function, make test rig. Now, I already know we're going to need our entity context. We pretty much always need entity context for anything outside of the entities. So let's get our entities, make entity context. All right. And let's just go ahead and return that for now. And let's start Let's start writing it out. Let's just start figuring out what is our first test. So we'll do our describe real quick. Serialize. Let's going to call this pick challenge serializer. All right. Now, let's get this going. Oops. It forms, let's just start with it forms the serialized state as expected. All right, so what does that mean? So here's what we know. Let's go ahead and we're going to get we're going to do our make test rig. Nope, make test rig. I'm going to spread the entities. It just makes life a little bit easier to pick out the entities we want. And we know, we're going to set up our pick challenge entity. Nope, that's not right. I'm surprised that's not working. Oh, it's just because it's not being read. Now let's just say pick challenge dot correct. Wait, why aren't you working? Oh, forgot this. There we go. Pick challenge. Here we go. Let's just say the correct ID is hotspot 1. All right. And we're going to just stub in some data, some fake data. Pick challenge dot set feedback for hotspot. We're going to say hotspot 1 and the feedback. Well, no, let's do hotspot 1, I guess. Doesn't matter a ton. And the feedback is correct, something like that. And then just for fun, because I know we're going to end up with a list, we're going to do another hotspot feedback for number 2. And we're going to say, no way. All right? So there's our challenge, right? This is where we set up the state. Now we're going to do this. We're going to do this thing where we're going to call this get state system. All right, so first off, I can see right away we need to up here make our serializers. So constant equals new serialize pick challenge. And we're going to return that. Right? So now we've got this. Bring this out here. So now we're going to know, now we're going to have our constant state is going to equal serializer dot get system state. All right. And then we'll start doing some expects down here, but we're on the wrong test. So let's see. Something spelled wrong. Seriali. Well, I'm not worried about that right now. Let's go ahead and grab this. And let's do a P. Paste that in. All right, this should fail because we're going to throw this error. All right, so now we got to return our state. So let's go ahead and define our state. Let's go ahead and describe what does our state look like. So we're down here at the bottom. We're going to do this interface. We're going to wait, we got to do it below the class. We're going to do export interface serialize pick. Wait, I'm going to call this pick challenge state. And just to keep us future proof, I'm going to call this V1. Even though we don't have a V2 yet. Because the point of the serialization version is that down the road we can extend this to do other things. So what do we know? We know we're going to need to store the correct ID. So correct ID is going to be a string. And we know we need to store the feedback. And I think that's about it. So how do we want to store this feedback? This has got to be we want this to be a simple JSON object. So we don't want to use a map. We want to use more of an object. So we're going to do feedback. Does anybody know how to do, I might have to Google this, how to describe, essentially I want this object to be the ID and then the feedback like this, right? So is it like, does anybody know how to describe, I'm going to look this up real quick. Type object with key strings, is that right?
Wouldn't you just have to do object key, object value?
I think it's maybe this. I think it's...
Oh, it's TypeScript, sorry, not JavaScript.
Yeah, it's because it's TypeScript. I think it's just key is a string and the type is a string. That's not going to work? Okay. All right. Well, let me just, we'll work through this. I can do another one real quick. We're going to export interface pick challenge feedback. And this will just be ID and then feedback. We'll start with this and then we can see if we get this any better. For this is a little, so now it's just going to be an array of these is what we're doing. Okay. Let's call this V1 just to be safe. Okay, so now we got a way to store our feedback and our correct ID. So here's our output. So let's go ahead and form this up. So now what we're going to do is okay, I can see now we need to get a hold of the entity, right? We need this pick challenge. So we need a constructor. And we're going to bring in our entity. So entity context, and let's store this as a private pick challenge. And that's a pick challenge there, and so we'll do this dot pick challenge equals entities dot pick challenge. All right. Now what we need to do is this. All right, we're going to form up. All right, so our return constant state, and that's of type this. It's going to equal ID. No. Correct ID. It's going to equal this dot pick challenge dot correct ID. Now it's not going to like that because sometimes our correct ID in here can be null or undefined. So we'll just always default it to an empty string. And then we're going to have feedback. And right now I'm just going to make that an empty array. And we'll fill that out when we get into when we do our test. So we're going to return this state. All right. Now let's see. Why did this not pass over here? Kind of expected it to pass. What do we got? What do we got? Oh, we need our entities in here. So there we go. See if that worked. Doesn't have a test. Oh, look at this. We've like nested too many times here. What is going on? Here we go. There we go. All right, so now we're not throwing that error anymore. Now let's check it. Now we expect state dot. Oh, we can go ahead and cast this as we can go ahead and cast it as this, and that'll make our life a little bit easier. Bring that in, and so now we expect state dot correct ID to equal this guy, right? We expect this to be here. All right, so there we go. And we expect, let's see, what do we expect? We expect the feedback to have length of 2 because we've added 2 feedbacks right here. So we should have a length of 2. And this one is going to fail now, I'll bet, because we're sending back an empty array. So let's go ahead and map this. So what we can do here is we could do this dot pick challenge. Actually, I'm going to bust it out just so it's a little easier to read. Let's do a constant. Feedback is going to equal this dot pick challenge dot feedback. Okay. So here's a little bit of a thing. We do not have a way to just get all the feedback. You can see our entity is set up to get the feedback for a particular hotspot, but it's not set up to just give me all the feedback. So I need to know the hotspots, or I need this thing to return all the feedback. Which way should we do it? Let's stay in here. I think there's a more elegant way to do this, but we're going to just do it this way for now. We're going to do this. We're going to essentially iterate through the hotspots. So we're going to store the hotspot repo, private hotspot repo. So we're going to get into that hotspot repo. And this will give us a list of all the hotspots. And that comes from the entities, hotspot repo. There we go. Now what we can do is we can do hotspot repo dot, do we have get all? Get hotspots dot map. So this is going to be a hotspot. And we're going to, let me go ahead and strongly type this. This will make sure we check things. So we're going to do this is it needs to be an, what is this? What are you doing? So wait, let me try it again. All right, we're trying to get the feedback. No. Yeah, we're trying to get the feedback. There we go. All right. Oh, this is going to be an array of these things. This is a little bit junky, but we'll clean it up in a second. So this is going to, okay, so we're going to say constant feedback. We're going to say is going to be this dot pick challenge dot get feedback for hotspot. Now we got that hotspot ID, and we're going to return this ID is hotspot dot ID, and feedback is hotspot feedback. All right. It's not the most elegant, but we'll come back and refactor. So what we're trying to do, and then now this feedback is what we're going to return in our state. All right, so that was a bit junky, but we'll get it working, and then we'll refactor. Surprised that didn't work. Oh, okay. So, all right, so notice we're iterating through a hotspot repo. We set feedback for hotspots, but we didn't actually set up hotspots. So we're not ever going to get these. So what we need to do up here in our setup is we need to do entities.hotspot repo hotspots. We're going to add 2 hotspots. So this will be a make hotspot, and we're just going to use these 2 IDs that we know down here. So that and this one. All right, now that should give us our let's see if that passes. There we go. Now, let's do a couple more checks in here. Let's make sure the feedback is getting set the way we think it is. So I expect feedback of 0 to equal correct. And we expect the second feedback to equal no way. All right, let's see if that worked. One more save. Come on now. Oh, it's not working. Ah. Oh, that's right. It's an object, right? So it's actually going to equal. It's going to equal. We need this this thing here. So it's going to be ID is going to equal hotspot 1, like this, and oops, and then the feedback is going to equal hotspot is going to equal the no way, or the correct, like that. So that's feedback, like that. That's what we expect that to equal, and the same as this one too. So we're going to do that, hotspot 2. And this is the expect for that. Oh, and this should be 1. Okay, let's see if that works. Then we'll kind of circle back and discuss this mess. Now, we might be... Okay, there we go. So, not the most elegant, but we got it working. Essentially, we're gonna we use our hotspot repo. We loop through, and we're going to get all the hotspot feedbacks from the hotspot repo. Now, do we like, well, we're going to carry on, but it seems a little weird. It feels like we should just pull this straight out of the entity instead of having to do this, like, grab this entity, loop through that one, and then use that to grab the feedback out of this. That feels a little junky. But we'll move on, and we'll come back and refactor that in a minute. Okay, so now we have found out that it forms the serialized state as expected. One little trick another test I forgot to check for at the beginning that I do in a lot of these. You can always look at these other serialized states, and they're all kind of the same. So the serialized app state, for example, you're gonna find it's got a lot of the same, a lot of the same setup. And one of the main things is when the serialized state is created, it needs to register itself with the state machine. So this is how it gets brought into the system. It registers itself and says, hey, I'm a state. My state name is Pick Challenge, and you can ask me for states or give me states, and I'll take care of it from there. So we need to make sure we do this register state change. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab that off of another serializer. Just grab that same one, that same test right here. And I'm going to paste it into this one. So I'm going to put it at the first because it's kind of one of the earlier things we need to do. Registers with state change. And like that. Okay, so that's going to fail because we're not doing it. But let me just run through what that does. You'll notice we don't use the test rig. And that's because this happens during instantiation, during construction. And so we want the construction of this to live in the test as well. So you can see we make another entity context. We hijack the state machine, the register call with a jest function. So we inject our little mock function onto there. Then we construct our state, our serialized state, and we expect that this state machine.register system that we injected up here, we expect it to be called with our serializer. We expect it to be registering itself. So let's hook that up. Get that over here. What that means is, where are we? We're down here. We need a constructor. Here we go. We need to do this. We need entities.stateMachine.register serialized system, and it's this. That's going to register. That gets us in and adds us to the serialized system. Okay, so now we're hooked into the system. We're creating a state. Let's go ahead and apply our default state. So what would our default state be? So let's see. We're going to go here and we're going to say it clears the entity when the default when the default state is applied. All right, we're going to do that. We're going to clear the state. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to grab a lot of this stuff off of here and just put it down here. So we got all this stuff in here. Now what I'm going to do is we're going to say serializer dot clear apply default state. And here's what I expect. No, not that. Well, first off, we're not going to use the transition number, so we can just delete that. We're not going to transition. So we'll just delete that. It's okay. The big state machine can deal with it. So we'll take that out. And this is probably going to throw an error, which it should because we're throwing an error. I'm going to go ahead and take that out, and that'll make it run. And then we can start putting our tests in there. So that should pass, even though we're not testing anything. All right, cool. Now, what do we expect? We expect pick challenge.correctID to be undefined, I think. Is it undefined? What did we say the pick challenge ID could be? Correct ID. Yep, undefined. Okay, so we expect, if we're going back to a default state, I've lost track of where we are. Here we are. If we're going back to a default state, you know, that means there's no data set. So there's nothing. We're starting empty. So we got to set the correct ID to undefined. All right, so I expect that to happen. Let's see, does that happen? It's going to fail, I'm guessing. All right, it did. So now we can, let's do that. Let's make this test pass. So this dot pick challenge dot correct ID is going to be undefined. There, we got that one. Okay. You know, I was supposed to do this. There's one more feature in this entity. We don't have a way to clear feedback. And so we didn't finish this entity. And so there's supposed to be actually one more thing on here called clear. And we won't be able to clear essentially there's no way to clear the feedback text as of right now. So let me just throw this in real quick. Abstract clear, and it's going to be a void. I'll do the test later. Let me just get this done. Clear equals, I need to put a note in here. And this is going to essentially, feedback lookup is going to equal it empty. And actually, we might as well, it's actually this dot clear. because it's a map, and correct ID, we'll just unset that. So this should have been written with tests, but we'll just rip through this thing fast. Get that going. All right. Needs. That's not going to notify or anything. So, but anyways, keep charging here. All right. So over here, we're going to change this around, and now we're going to say this dot pick challenge. We're going to say clear. All right, so that'll clear the pick challenge. All right. There we go. See if that works. We can also do this. We can say we expect this feedback to be cleared out. So let's check for that. So get feedback for hotspot number 1. We expect that. Oops. We expect this to equal an empty string. Remember, we always return an empty string. And let's clean this up. And we'll clean this one up. Let's just add this in here. So we had 2. This should be hotspot 2. That should also be undefined. Okay. So this is resetting our entity. If we end up with, if somebody's given us a new state or whatever, we've cleared out our entity and everything is good to go. So that's what we're hoping for the reset. Okay, what else do we have? Let's go ahead and get to our apply serialized system. Again, we're going to drop out our transition. We don't need it. We don't have a way to smoothly do anything. So we're just going to kill that one. And now we're going to say it applies version 1 data to the system, to the entity. All right, so now we're going to kind of do the reverse of this thing. So now we're at this point where we're going to give it an object, a state object, and it should apply it to our entity. So at the end of the day, our entity should reflect that state. So let's go ahead and make our test rig. We can just, sometimes I like to write early test to prove that we're starting out empty. So I'm going to grab these guys, and we're going to prove that we have no feedback for hotspot 1, we have no feedback for hotspot 2, and that the correct ID is undefined. Then we're going to make a new state. We're going to do constant state. State is going to, and we're going to go ahead and cast it to be this, so it makes it a little easier. It's going to equal, let's go ahead and fill this out. Correct ID. We're going to put in this for we're going to put this in for the hotspot ID. And then feedback is going to be an array of these objects where ID is, we're going to use this. ID 1 is the ID. And the feedback is this. And we'll be able to just kind of copy those tests back down. So we're just kind of reversing that upper test. And so this is 2. Oh, we need feedback. It's going to be this. And feedback is going to be this. And this feedback is going to be no way. So this is the inverse, right? So let me move this up. We'll set this up here. All right, so that's our setup. And messed up something here. Got too many quotes. There we go. So now we start out. We expect there's not any feedback for hotspot 1 or hotspot 2. And the correct ID is undefined. Now we're going to do apply. We're going to do our serializer dot apply system state. We're going to apply that state we made. And this is version 1. All right. Now we can expect these things to work. So now we expect, let's grab our same set of tests, but we expect them to not, nope, I have to pull it this way. We're going to expect these to be different now. Now, this is going to be equal to this. This is going to be equal to this. And then this is going to equal hotspot 1. All right, that's what should happen, right? So let's make it happen. Oops, forgot an expect. All right, so now we get our state. Let's go ahead and do this thing. We're going to do constant cast. I like doing this little cast state is going to be equal to state is going to be equal to state as, and we're going to cast it as this. And we'll get into some error handling in a second because you guys might be thinking, well, what if they send me a weird object? We'll get into that. So now we're going to do this. This dot what is this? Pick challenge dot correct ID is going to be cast state dot correct ID. This dot set. No, we're going to do cast state dot feedback for each. Feedback is going to go to this dot pick state challenge dot set feedback for hotspot, and now we're going to do feedback dot ID and feedback dot feedback. A lot of feedbacks in there. We'll rename this in the refactor stage. All right, so that should set up that thing. Let's see. Hey, that's working. All right. Now let's start trying to, as you guys, you might be thinking, all right, well, we're not taking care of our version number. What if this cast doesn't work out? What if we're past a version number we're not expecting? There's a lot of things that can go wrong in here. So let's start dealing with that. I'm going to just throw down some notes in here that I can think of right now. Different version number. We're going to do a bad cast. And then another thing I just thought of is clearing old data. All right, so those are things I want to test next because I can imagine, you can see right here, we're setting feedback for the hotspot. But what if we didn't clear out any previous feedback? So if it was already set up with these, we're applying a new state. We need to probably clear out that previous state and not have that in there. So let's start with that. So let's go here. We're going to say it clears out the old feedback text. The old feedback. So we're going to do, we'll just grab it here. We'll do a little arrow function. And we're going to say constant pick challenge and serializer equals make test rig. All right. Now we're going to go ahead and stick one in there. Pick challenge dot add set feedback for hotspot. Some old hot spot. And YOLO, hello world. All right, great. So we set that up. Let's take this guy and put this into here. Now, we've set this feedback. We're going to apply this state now. And we now expect this to be empty because it should be cleared out. We can't, we've reset our state. So this should be an empty string. So there we go. Let's see if that works. Probably not. There we go. So what that tells me is when we apply a state, first thing we should do is just clear the existing challenge. So we're going to do this. Clears the existing challenge. And that should clear out all that initial data. See if that worked. All right, what other? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I know this might be a little bit of a simpleton question, but so what does serial dot apply system state parentheses state? You said that should set it to 0 again, or to clear again, or to 0 again? Like, I'm sorry, I just got lost on that one assumption you made.
Yeah, so let's look at our entity up here. So this is our entity. In our entity, we've got this map of feedback. And it's a feedback that's related to a hotspot. Now, when we apply a serialized state, in this situation, we want to clear out all the old state. We want it to be kind of like reset, and then we're setting it. So what I did was I inserted a previous call out in there, a previous feedback. So here, we set up a previous feedback, set feedback for hotspot. And this is some old hotspot. So this is in the entity now. Now, I'm going to apply a new state. And that's the state we're saying here. This does not include any feedback for this guy, right? So this one needs to be cleared out. This should not exist anymore. These are the only feedback that should exist in our entity when we get done applying this state.
Okay, I think I follow.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you can mull on that a little bit. Essentially, the states are literally our slides in our slideshow. And when we go from slide 1 to slide 2, the hotspot list is going to change. These old, our everything is we're going to have different hotspots. We should assume. We don't know what hotspots are going to be in there. And so this is the state for the entity, for our pick challenge entity. And this is what we should have for feedback. Nothing else, nothing more, nothing less. This is what the feedback should be in our entity. All right. Okay. Next one. All right, so I think we got this one working. Let's do a bad cast. So what does it do? Well, I'm going to introduce you guys to our console, our dispatch. So we've got a built-in console, and I'll show you what that looks like, but we're going to start talking a little bit about the console here. So what's going to happen is we're going to send in a bad object, something we can't deal with. And the script needs to be able to handle that, and we're going to make some decisions about what that does. So it warns and applies the default state if the object passed in cannot be cast. Okay, so here I'll show you what that looks like. We're going to go ahead and do it. So let me get my test rig. And this time I'm going to say constant state is equal to, we're just going to make something foo bar. All right. Now we're going to pass that in. So down here, we're going to pass in this state. And we need this thing to do something, right? We don't know what happened, but somebody gave us a bad state object. What do we want to happen? Well, here's what I think we want to happen. I want the serializer. I'm going to mock out serializer.apply default state to be a jest function. So we're going to hijack the apply default state, and we're going to see if that we expect.
Could you try again?
Oh, my Google's kicking off. We're going to expect this to be called. All right. So you guys follow that. Essentially, if we come into this and this cast state doesn't work out, we're going to call this instead. We're just going to default to that. That's what we're going to do. And we're going to do one more thing. We've got this thing in the app state called app dispatcher. So again, keyword here, dispatcher. Back, you guys remember the dispatches are messages we're sending to the host. The dispatcher is what is all of our messages we can send. And so one of the things we can dispatch is we can log a warning. Instead of writing to our console, we encourage you guys as app developers to log it to the host. That way we can handle it in a centralized place. Because when this thing is in the real world, we're going to be in a player with 10 different apps. And we want to be able to let the player, the host, handle all these consoles and stuff and collect them up. And if we have problems, we have one place to look. So we're gonna get into that. So we're gonna do app dispatcher dot. There's this thing in here. So here's all the things we can currently send to the host right now, and we're gonna do a log warning, and we're gonna again, we're gonna mock this, and we're gonna expect this warning to be called. I know it's misspelled. I just noticed that the other day, and I need to fix that. Expect this to be called. All right, let's see. So this is going to happen when somebody passes a weird state to us. We need to just make sure we can handle it. We're writing a test to make sure that we can handle this thing. All right, so here's what we're going to do. Let's figure this out. How do we implement this? We're going to do this guy, and what we're going to do is just a couple quick tests. We're going to say if cast state dot feedback is undefined, or cast state dot correct ID is undefined. That means something went wrong. That tells us that they didn't work. If that's true, we're going to do this. We're gonna do we're gonna call this dot apply default state. So we're gonna fall back, and then we're just gonna bump out of here. We're gonna return out of here, and then we also need to go ahead and grab another. We're gonna private app dispatcher, and so we're gonna do an app dispatcher, and we need to set that up down here. Dot app dispatcher equals entities dot app dispatcher. And then we're going to log this problem so that it is out there. So where did that go? Right here. We're going to say this dot app dispatcher dot log warning. Now the app dispatcher, what it wants is it wants to know who's sending it. So we're going to say the sender is this guy, and we're going to say I'm going to put this into a little fancy string and say unable to parse the state. And this is going to be, I'm going to put a little thing in here. We're going to do $sign state.stringify. No, string. What is it? What is it? JSON.stringify? Stringify? And this will turn it into a string so that it shows up in the console state. All right. Well, let's see if that works. What do we got? Hey, everything's working. Do we have any? There we go. Okay, so recap. We're just making sure that this cast state works, right? When you do these little you're doing this cast, you got to check that because it's not always going to work. You don't know. You're not guaranteed that this object is this object. We hope it is, but we're not guaranteed. So we got to be tidy. We got to be tight and keep that tightened up. Okay, so that takes care of a bad cast. Let's handle an unsupported version number. So again, our version comes in. We're expecting this to be state 1, and we're casting it there. But what if it's some other version? Let's say something gets mixed up, and there's a future state, and somehow we're hitting this thing. We don't know what to do with it. Oops. We kind of do the same thing, right? So let's kind of copy this, and we're going to do, this time we're going to do a good state. We're going to keep the state good, but we're going to do a version number of -1. So you can see we're getting called and we're being told, and we should never encounter a -1, but this keeps this test less brittle. So we're going to see what happens here, and it's probably not going to fail because we're not checking for that. So now what we can do is we can do this. We can say if, caps lock's on. If this dot, if version number equals 1, we'll do this. All right. this is what we're going to do. So let's bring this out here and do this here. And then we're going to do an else. And then we will do this stuff. And this will be unsupported version number. And we're going to put the version number in here. All right. So, again, we may get the right state. I mean, we can cast this. That's not the problem. The problem is we don't know how to deal with this version number. And so we just don't even worry about it. We bop out and take care of that. Okay. That covers the state machine. Let me think through this real quick. Now, all right. So I think we've covered our use cases. So we've covered our requirements. Now we're good developers. So we come back over here. We close down our tests. We leave them running. But now we take a look at our thing here, and we look at this, and we're like, "Is this good?" Because we were pretty. This is kind of it's kind of messy, but we got our test running, so let's run through this and look at it. This is okay. I think I'm going to go back and refactor our entity to just our pick state entity, pick challenge entity to just return feedback, because this just feels not so clean. I don't really like this, but it's okay. Okay, it's a little too many dots, and we use the word feedback a lot, so let's kind of bust this out a little. Let's make this a little more readable. This is not readable as is. So let's do this. Constant hotspots equals this dot hotspot repo dot get hotspots. All right, so let's do that. That's one thing. All right, so good. We're going to do that. Now we're going to do hotspots dot for each hotspot. We're going to do this. Now let's do constant feedback is going to be this, and we're going to start it out as empty. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do feedback dot push. Well, no, let's do pick feedback, and now we're going to do, we need to do this here. We're going to get hotspot feedback for hotspot ID. I'm just refactoring this, trying to make it a little more readable because it's not great the way it is. So now we're going to do this pick feedback dot push in this new object, and we'll see if this is even more readable, which is this. There we go. All right, now let's see, do we like this better? A little bit less indenting. Those maps, array maps, kind of, I don't know, they're kind of confusing to me sometimes. This, I think, may be a little easier to read. It's less indentation, less of the dot functions, etc. So we're going to go with that. You could argue that maybe this isn't much better, but we'll go with it. Let's come down here. This one is really messy. Look at this guy. This is a junk show. Okay, so I'm going to bust out a function. We're going to do a private function. Well, we don't need to call it a function. We'll just do a private handle version 1. Handle state version 1. See how that feels. Again, we're just kind of working through this. So what I want to do is we're going to do a state, and it's going to be this guy. And we're going to do this. All right, now we can move a lot of this stuff here, we can take this out. We'll put this down here. Put that there, 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 there. All right, now we busted that out, so now we're a little more focused on what we're trying to do. And now we can do this dot handle state version 1, and we could just do the cast right in here like that and take this down. All right, so clean that up just a touch. Yeah. What else we got? All our tests are still passing. All right. I'm going to go with that. Now, last thing we're going to do, we're about done. We need to add this to our builder. So we do a new serialize. SERI pick challenge. All right. That gets it going. So now we have wired in, we have set up a new serialized system. And it's good, it's in there, and it's all wrapped into the system. Now let me show you guys where this actually lives in our player. Let me go ahead and get this thing running real quick. npm start. We've got this folder in our project called data. This is where we store configuration data for the project. You'll see it's a lot of JSON stuff. The key one here is persistent states. So if we open this up, what you're going to see is we have 2 states in here. These are the actual states you see in the sandbox when you start it. You'll notice they each have an ID. It's a good. It's got a name, wire cover, and light curtain. And it's got data. All right, now we got 2 states. Now if you dive into this data, this is where those systems live. So you'll see, it's a little hard to poke around, but if you start looking in here, you'll see the systems are an array. And so what really just happened by adding our serialized system, we have added data into this string. This is where it gets stored. So even though we don't have a way to look at it right now, let me show you what will happen if we were able to like type in. When we get to the point where we want to type in stuff and store it, I'll show you how we do that. We'll have to just use a different system, but let's get this baby running. Is it going to start? Do it. There we go. Okay. So, there we go. Let's mount the app. Now you can see here are the 2 states that we just looked at. Active puck, wire cover, and light curtain. Those are right here. Active puck, wire cover, and light curtain. If you guys ever want to change it or do whatever, here's how you do it. I'm actually going to create a new state to show you what that looks like. We're going to start here. We're going to create a new state. I'm going to enter some slide. This is some slide text. We're going to keep the challenge set. Whoa, we might as well do a pick challenge. There we go. I'm going to save it. So now you can see we got this is the slide text. Let's set our view. These are all serialized. So I'm going to set it to be some sort of weird view like that, just so it's obvious. We're going to hit save. That in the background ran those serializers. It picked up all that data. It put it into a string and it stored it into our state machine. Now, if I go previous, it's going to go to the previous state. If I go next, we're back to our serialized state. And we did that applying and storing. All that serialized systems going on in there. Now, I'm going to hit stop. Now, because we're not hooked up to anything, this is not persistent. If I were to hit refresh, we go back to whatever the data is. If you guys ever find yourself wanting to add new states in, all you do is you click this button, Save Persistent States. It downloads the JSON locally. You open that up. You just copy this whole thing, all copy, and you replace this guy with that. So I'm going to hit V. I'm going to format it. And now you'll see we have our new state. Here's our demo state. And on top of that, so that'll show up here. We'll rename it. Also in here, what you'll find now is, remember our state, let's see, there's hotspots. I'm trying to find, here we go. Oh, here's our challenge pick. Serialized version 1 name. Here we go. So this is our state. Oh, come back here, you. Here it is. This is what we just built. Serialized version number is 1. The name is Pick Challenge. Remember, we set that up. So that's where this comes from. Now we're in here. This is how we store it. This goes into our activity files. This is how we persist these things. Okay. We're running over a little bit of time on this one. But that was it. Let me go ahead and stop my screen recorder. And